The sky burned red the night they arrived. The invasion wasn't sudden. It was surgical, calculated, and devastatingly effective. Within hours, Earth's major cities had gone dark. Communications collapsed. Governments crumbled. The invaders called themselves the Vakar, an empire spanning thousands of star systems. To them, Earth was just another primitive rock, ripe for conquest. They didn't expect humanity to fight back the way it did. The first explosions hit New York, London, and Beijing almost simultaneously. The Vakar's ships didn't descend in a chaotic swarm like in the movies. No, they moved with cold precision. Their energy beams tore through military bases, power grids, and satellite stations, severing Earth's ability to respond. Their technology was centuries beyond anything humanity had, making resistance almost laughable. And yet, humanity did resist. Ryan Carter had been a soldier once, before the world fell apart. He'd done his time in the deserts, jungles, and frozen hellscapes of Earth's endless wars, fighting battles that seemed to have no real purpose. But now, staring at the wreckage of his hometown in Colorado, he knew this was different. This was survival. He crouched beside a crumbling gas station, gripping an old M4 rifle, laughable against the plasma-wielding aliens patrolling the streets. The Vakar were tall, almost skeletal, with gray-blue armor that shimmered like liquid metal. Their movements were eerily smooth, and their black, pupil-less eyes showed no emotion. Ryan had seen them execute survivors without hesitation. His radio crackled. "Carter, you there?" The voice belonged to Sarah Wu, an ex-engineer from NASA who had somehow become their makeshift resistance leader. "I'm here," he whispered, keeping low as a patrol passed by. "We're gathering near the old airport. We have something big." Ryan exhaled. They had nothing big. Every battle so far had been a massacre. But what else could he do? Lay down and die? "I'm on my way," he said. The Denver International Airport had been reduced to a ghost town. Once a hub of movement and life, now it was littered with crashed planes, blackened craters, and smoldering wreckage. The resistance had taken shelter in an old underground maintenance tunnel, a place the Vakar seemed to overlook. Ryan slipped inside, greeted by the ragged faces of survivors. Men, women, even a few children huddled together, their eyes hollow from hunger and fear. But what caught his attention wasn't the people. It was the device at the center of the room. A metal sphere, about the size of a basketball, hummed faintly, covered in alien-like etchings. Sarah stood beside it, her dark hair tied back, exhaustion clear on her face. Beside her was Dr. Henry Bishop, a physicist from MIT. Ryan pointed at the sphere. "What the hell is that?" Sarah smiled grimly. "Something they didn't expect us to have?" Bishop stepped forward. "It's a Vakar neural disruptor. Their entire species is linked by a psionic network. It's how they coordinate so efficiently. We think this can break that link. If we can activate it on a large scale." Ryan's eyes widened. "We can turn them against each other?" "That's the idea," Sarah said. A distant boom shook the tunnel. Dust fell from the ceiling. "They're getting closer," someone muttered. Ryan looked at the device. "How long?" Bishop hesitated. "We still need a power source strong enough to amplify the signal. Without it, we're just flipping a light switch in a hurricane." Ryan cursed under his breath. They didn't have time. The Vakar weren't playing around. They were systematically wiping out any resistance, and Denver was next. Then an idea hit him. The fusion core in their warships, could it work? Bishop blinked. "In theory, yes, but those ships are heavily guarded." Ryan cracked a grin. "Then we better get moving." Sarah sighed. "I hate that I agree with you." Outside, the sky rumbled. The Vakar were coming. Humanity's fight was just beginning. The air smelled like burning metal and ash as Ryan, Sarah, and a small team of resistance fighters crept through the ruins of Denver. The Vakar warship loomed in the distance, a black monolith hovering above the crumbling cityscape. Its presence was both terrifying and mesmerizing, smooth, curved, and seamless, as if it had been grown rather than built. That was their target. The fusion core inside that ship could power the neural disruptor, humanity's only shot at turning the tide of the war. But getting to it was another story. Ryan adjusted the strap of his rifle, glancing at Sarah, who was double-checking her homemade EMP grenades. "You sure these will work?" he asked. Sarah smirked. "You're the soldier, I'm the engineer. You shoot, I make stuff go boom." Behind them, Jonas, a former demolitions expert from the Marine Corps, grunted. "We're gonna need a hell of a bigger boom to crack that ship open." Ryan nodded. "Then we improvise." They had no choice. The Vakar patrols moved with eerie synchronization, gliding through the streets like ghosts. They never spoke, never hesitated, just cold, calculating movements. Ryan signaled the group to halt as two Vakar enforcers stalked by, their elongated rifles humming with lethal energy. They weren't just soldiers, they were hunters. The team flattened against a collapsed bus, barely breathing. Jonas tightened his grip on his knife, but Ryan shook his head. Not yet. The aliens passed. The moment they were out of sight, Ryan waved his team forward. Silent, quick, deadly. They reached the edge of the warship's landing zone, an open field of blackened concrete where an energy lift shimmered beneath the hovering behemoth. Dozens of Vakar worked below, operating strange machines and maintaining the ship's structure. Jonas whistled under his breath. "That's a lot of ugly bastards." Sarah exhaled. "We need a distraction." Ryan scanned the area and spotted an abandoned Vakar weapons platform, a plasma turret, its power core still glowing faintly. "That turret," he said. "If we overload it, it might cause a chain reaction." Sarah's eyes lit up. "Now you're thinking." Ryan grinned. "Jonas, think you can rig it?" Jonas cracked his knuckles. "Watch me." Jonas worked fast, planting a remote detonator inside the plasma turret. The core flickered dangerously as he tampered with its energy regulators. Sarah and Ryan covered him, keeping watch as the Vakar continued their eerie operations below. Ryan felt the weight of the moment pressing on his chest. If they failed here, it wasn't just their lives on the line. It was humanity's last hope. "Done," Jonas whispered, wiping sweat from his brow. Sarah checked her watch. "We have about 30 seconds before that thing blows." Ryan nodded. "Then we move, now." The explosion was blinding. A massive shockwave ripped through the landing zone, sending Vakar flying in every direction. The plasma turret detonated in a brilliant blue fireball, igniting nearby energy cells. Panic spread through the alien ranks. Ryan didn't hesitate. He sprinted toward the energy lift, his team close behind. The warship's hull split open, revealing an entrance. The Vakar were disoriented, scrambling to contain the fire, giving the humans the perfect window to infiltrate. Ryan dived into the energy lift, his body yanked upward by an invisible force. The world blurred around him as he ascended into the belly of the beast. Sarah and Jonas followed right behind. As they landed inside, the cold, metallic corridors of the Vakar warship stretched before them. The real fight was just beginning. The moment Ryan's boots touched the Vakar warship's cold, metallic floor, he raised his rifle, sweeping the corridor for movement. The ship's interior was unlike anything he had ever seen. Organic-looking walls pulsed with a faint blue glow, as if the vessel itself were alive. The air smelled sterile, tinged with something metallic, something unnatural. Sarah and Jonas landed beside him, weapons raised. The neural disruptor was their objective, but first they had to reach the ship's fusion core. Ryan whispered, "No unnecessary gunfire. Stealth is our best bet." Jonas smirked. "Stealth ain't really my style." Sarah rolled her eyes. "Then try not to get us killed." They moved forward, steps silent against the smooth floor. The Vakar hadn't realized they were inside yet. But that wouldn't last. The corridors were eerily empty. The walls vibrated with a low hum, like a distant heartbeat. Sarah ran a hand along the surface, her expression twisting. "This ship, it's alive," Jonas snorted. "Great, we're sneaking through an alien's intestines." Ryan motioned for silence. The path ahead opened into a massive chamber, filled with towering structures of pulsating energy, humming softly. A dozen Vakar engineers worked below, their elongated fingers moving in synchrony over strange consoles. At the center of the chamber sat their target, the ship's fusion core, a massive glowing sphere of concentrated energy encased in a shifting lattice of alien metal. Ryan exhaled. "There it is." Sarah frowned. "How the hell do we get close without setting off alarms?" Jonas smirked and held up a small, modified EMP charge. "We don't. We blow those consoles, and while they're scrambling, we rip out the core." Sarah narrowed her eyes. "That'll bring the whole ship down on us." Ryan thought for a moment, then grinned. "Good. That means they won't be focused on the resistance outside." Sarah groaned. "I hate you," Jonas chuckled. "You love me." Ryan ignored them and signaled Jonas to plant the charge. The demolitions expert moved fast, slipping between the towering energy columns, carefully placing 3 charges on the main consoles. Sarah tapped Ryan's shoulder, whispering, "Once we pull the core, we have minutes before this place goes nuclear. We need an extraction plan." Ryan nodded. "One problem at a time." Jonas rejoined them. "Charges set. Ready when you are." Ryan exhaled. "Here goes nothing." "Do it." The explosion tore through the chamber, sending fire and shrapnel in all directions. The Vakar screamed, a high-pitched, unnatural sound as their consoles erupted in flames. Sparks rained down as alarms blared across the ship. Ryan didn't hesitate. He sprinted toward the fusion core, dodging falling debris. The protective lattice around it was shifting, struggling to remain stable after the attack. "Sarah!" he shouted. She was already there, her hands flying over the alien controls. "I think I can disable the containment field, but we'll have seconds to grab it before it destabilizes." Jonas opened fire, cutting down the first wave of Vakar soldiers charging into the chamber. Their sleek black rifles spat plasma, melting through metal and flesh alike. "Whatever you're doing, do it fast!" Jonas yelled, tossing a grenade into a crowd of approaching enemies. Ryan fired, dropping 2 Vakar before they could raise their weapons. The ship shook violently. The explosion had triggered a chain reaction. Sarah let out a triumphant yell. "Field down! Grab it!" Ryan lunged, his hands burning as they met the surface of the fusion core. It was searing hot, pulsing with raw energy. Every nerve in his body screamed, but he held on. With a final, desperate pull, he ripped the core free. The moment it disconnected, the entire ship lurched, a deep, otherworldly groan vibrating through the walls. The Vakar's psionic network had been shattered. Chaos erupted among their ranks as the ship's systems spiraled out of control. "Run!" Ryan shouted. They sprinted back toward the energy lift, plasma fire raining around them. The ship was dying, its internal systems collapsing without the core. The once glowing corridors were flickering, the organic walls shriveling like dying tissue. Jonas was the first to the lift. He leaped in, vanishing downward in a blur of energy. Sarah went next, clutching the disruptor tightly against her chest. Ryan turned, unloading the last of his magazine into a charging Vakar soldier before diving in after them. The lift plunged, sending them hurtling back to the surface. As they landed, Ryan hit the ground hard, rolling onto his back. Above, the Vakar warship convulsed like a wounded animal, its sleek surface cracking, collapsing in on itself. Then, a deafening explosion. The ship detonated, sending a massive shockwave across the city. The ground trembled as debris rained from the sky, burning chunks of alien metal embedding themselves in the ruins of Denver. Ryan coughed, pushing himself up. His hands throbbed, the fusion core still pulsing in his grip. Sarah and Jonas were already moving, pulling him to his feet. Jonas laughed breathlessly. "Well, that was subtle." Sarah looked at Ryan. "We got it. Now we end this." Ryan's grip tightened around the fusion core. The neural disruptor was ready. The Vakar had come to enslave Earth. Now humanity was about to erase them. The ruined city of Denver was still smoldering from the explosion when Ryan, Sarah, and Jonas sprinted through the wreckage, the Vakar fusion core pulsing in Ryan's grip. The alien warship had collapsed in on itself, burning in the night sky like a dying sun. But that wasn't enough. The invasion wasn't over. The real fight was still ahead. Sarah clutched the neural disruptor, her knuckles white. "We need to get this set up before they regroup," she said, breathless. Ryan nodded. "How much time do we have?" Jonas glanced at the sky, where Vakar dropships were already descending from the massive war cruiser that still hovered beyond the mountains. "Not long." The Vakar had lost one ship, but their fleet was still up there, watching, waiting. And once they realized what the humans had stolen, they wouldn't just attack. They would erase them. Ryan adjusted his grip on his rifle, heart pounding. "Then we move, now." Their destination was an abandoned military bunker, hidden in the foothills outside Denver, one of the last places where Earth's forces had made a stand before being wiped out. It had power, defenses, and the space to amplify the disruptor's signal. The journey there was a gauntlet of destruction. Streets were littered with human corpses, their bodies twisted from Vakar plasma burns. Cars were abandoned mid-escape, some still filled with the charred remains of their drivers. Buildings stood as hollowed-out skeletons, their windows shattered, their walls crumbling. Sarah kept her eyes forward, refusing to look at the dead. Jonas, however, muttered under his breath, "Damn aliens didn't just invade. They butchered us." Ryan exhaled sharply. "And now we butcher them." They reached the bunker entrance, hidden beneath the remains of a collapsed overpass. The reinforced steel doors were half buried under debris, but Jonas and Ryan managed to pry them open, forcing their way inside. The air was stale. The lights flickered weakly, powered by an old backup generator. The place had been abandoned for weeks, filled with discarded weapons, broken radios, and the remains of soldiers who had made their last stand here. Sarah wasted no time. She sprinted toward the main control room, where old communication systems and power conduits still hummed faintly. She dumped the neural disruptor onto a work table, already pulling apart wires and connectors. Ryan set the Vakar fusion core beside her. "Will it work?" Sarah grabbed a screwdriver, prying open the disruptor's casing. "If I can boost the signal through the bunker's radio towers, it'll spread across the entire region. Any Vakar within range will be cut off from their psionic network." Jonas slung his rifle over his shoulder. "And what happens after that?" Ryan met his gaze. "Then we kill them all." Jonas grinned. "Now you're speaking my language." The bunker's security alarms suddenly blared, a shrill, high-pitched scream echoing through the concrete tunnels. Sarah froze. "They found us," Jonas cursed. "How?" Ryan grabbed his rifle and rushed to the entrance, slamming his back against the wall. Peeking through a crack in the doors, he saw them. Vakar hunters. These weren't like the patrols they had avoided before. These were elite killers. Taller, more heavily armored, moving with unnatural precision. They carried double-bladed energy weapons along with their plasma rifles, their eyes glowing like dying embers. Ryan's pulse quickened. They sent the worst of the worst. Sarah kept working. "I just need 5 minutes." Jonas checked his magazine. "I can give you 3. Ryan inhaled. They weren't making it out of this without a fight. He gritted his teeth and pulled a grenade from his belt. Let's show these bastards what happens when they underestimate humanity. Jonas chuckled. Now you're really speaking my language. Ryan pulled the pin. Then the battle began. Ryan pulled the pin on the grenade and hurled it toward the bunker entrance. It bounced once, twice, then detonated, the explosion shaking the underground chamber. A shockwave of fire and shrapnel tore through the first wave of Vakar hunters, sending some of them flying backward. But they weren't so easily stopped. The remaining hunters rushed through the smoke, their bladed energy weapons humming with a sickening, electric whine. Unlike the standard Vakar soldiers, these elites didn't hesitate or stalk their prey. They charged. Ryan raised his rifle and fired. The first hunter jerked as the bullets slammed into its armor, but it didn't slow down. It was fast, too fast. In a blur, it lunged at him, swinging its double-bladed weapon straight for his head. Ryan ducked, barely avoiding instant decapitation. He rolled to the side and fired point-blank into its midsection. The bullets pierced its armor this time, thick, black-green blood spraying onto the bunker floor. The alien let out a horrid screech, but it still wasn't dead. Die already, you ugly son of a... A second hunter tackled Ryan, slamming him into the concrete wall so hard the air exploded from his lungs. His rifle clattered to the ground as the alien pressed an armored forearm against his throat, cutting off his breath. Ryan struggled, gasping, clawing at the creature's arm. The hunter's emotionless black eyes bore into him, its mouth twisting in what almost looked like a grin. Then, suddenly, its head snapped sideways. Jonas stood behind it, breathing hard, his combat knife buried to the hilt in the alien's neck. "Yeah, you didn't see me, did you?" Jonas growled, yanking the blade free. The Vakar collapsed, its body twitching as black blood oozed from the fatal wound. Ryan gasped for air, rubbing his throat. "Took you long enough." Jonas grinned. "Wanted you to feel useful." A plasma bolt sizzled through the air, and Jonas barely dodged in time. Another hunter stormed in, firing as it advanced. Jonas rolled behind cover, shouting, "Sarah, how's it coming?" From the control room, Sarah shouted back, "Almost there! Just hold them off!" Ryan grabbed his rifle and pivoted, unloading his entire clip into the approaching hunter. It absorbed the first few hits, but Jonas flanked it, putting a burst of rounds straight into the gap in its armor. The hunter collapsed. Ryan and Jonas both exhaled heavily. "How many more?" Jonas asked. Ryan peeked through the smoke-filled hallway. More footsteps. More glowing eyes in the darkness. He clenched his jaw. Too many. Inside the control room, Sarah's fingers flew across the ancient keyboard, overriding systems, rerouting power, forcing the neural disruptor to sync with the bunker's antenna array. The device hummed louder, glowing brighter. Sarah's heart pounded. If she didn't calibrate the frequency just right, it wouldn't affect the entire Vakar force. They'd still be able to coordinate, still be able to wipe humanity out. She slammed her fist on the desk. "Come on, come on!" Then, finally, the disruptor reached full power. The bunker's antenna fired the signal skyward, sending an invisible wave of psionic interference across the battlefield. Outside, the Vakar hunters suddenly froze. Their bodies twitched violently, their heads snapping back as if struck by an unseen force. Their movements became erratic, their once perfect synchronization collapsing into pure chaos. Ryan saw the nearest hunter stumble, clutching its head as if experiencing a sudden migraine. Jonas tilted his head. Did we just break them? Ryan didn't hesitate. He raised his rifle. Then let's finish them. The Vakar's greatest strength had always been their coordination, their psionic unity, their ability to act as one mind. But now, that mind was shattered. Hunters that had once fought with perfect efficiency were now stumbling, disoriented, turning on each other in confusion. Some even collapsed, their bodies shaking violently as if their very biology was failing them. Ryan and Jonas didn't give them a chance to recover. Gunfire erupted. Ryan dropped one hunter with a headshot, then pivoted and emptied his clip into another before it could react. Jonas moved like a ghost, dodging between crumbling pillars, cutting down confused Vakar with perfectly placed shots. One of the remaining hunters roared, swinging its energy blade wildly, but its own ally accidentally stepped into its path, the blade slicing through the second alien's torso. Jonas barked a laugh. "They're killing each other," Ryan reloaded, breathing hard. "And we're gonna make sure they keep doing it." Far above Earth, on the Vakar war cruiser, their supreme commander stood motionless, staring at the chaos unfolding below. His psionic link to the ground forces had been severed. He could feel his soldiers dying, turning on each other, failing. This was impossible. This was humiliating. The humans had been nothing but primitive animals, a species of war and blood and stubbornness. But they had done this. They had adapted. The commander's black eyes narrowed. If he could not control this world, then he would do the only logical thing. Destroy it. Ryan's radio crackled. A survivor's voice came through, panicked. "We're picking up energy spikes from the Vakar fleet. Oh my God, they're charging their planetary weapons!" Ryan's stomach dropped. Jonas's face darkened. "They're gonna glass the whole damn planet." Sarah rushed into the room, out of breath. "We shut down their soldiers, but if they bomb us from orbit, it won't matter." Ryan's grip tightened on his rifle. Number not like this. He looked at the smoldering battlefield, the remains of humanity's final stand. Then he looked at the Vakar fusion core still pulsing on the table. A suicidal idea hit him. He exhaled sharply, turned to Sarah and said, "Can we get this thing onto one of their ships?" Sarah's eyes widened. Jonas just grinned. "You're talking about taking the fight to them, aren't you?" Ryan nodded. "We're not just gonna stop them. We're gonna erase them." The bunker trembled as the Vakar fleet charged its orbital weapons. The war wasn't over. Not yet. The neural disruptor had shattered their coordination, turned their ground forces into a chaotic mess, but their supreme commander had just made his final decision. If the Vakar couldn't have Earth, no one would. Ryan gritted his teeth. "If we don't act now, we're all dead." Sarah was already thinking ahead. "You want to plant the fusion core on one of their ships?" It wasn't a question. It was a confirmation. Jonas whistled, shaking his head. "That's not a mission. That's a damn suicide run." Ryan looked at him. "You backing out?" Jonas grinned. "Hell no." Sarah exhaled. "We don't have time to argue. If they fire, there won't be anything left." Ryan turned to her. "Can we get up there?" She hesitated, then nodded. "There's one way. They're dropships." Jonas blinked. "Wait, you want us to steal a Vakar dropship and fly straight into their damn fleet?" Ryan shrugged. "Worked so far." Jonas laughed. "You're insane. I love it." Sarah pulled up a battered tactical map of the city. "There's a Vakar landing zone 4 miles from here. If we can hijack a dropship, we can get inside their cruiser." Ryan grabbed his rifle. "Then let's move. They raced through the ruined streets, dodging firefights between confused Vakar troops. Some were still loyal, fighting to restore order. Others were completely lost, attacking anything that moved. Human survivors were taking full advantage of the chaos. Resistance fighters, scattered remnants of the world's armies, emerged from the rubble, gunning down their former oppressors. Ryan saw a Vakar officer screaming at its own soldiers, trying to rally them, before a group of humans tore it apart in a hail of bullets and knives. The tide was turning. But it wouldn't matter if the fleet fired. Ryan pushed forward, leading the team through the rubble of Denver. Explosions rocked the city as collapsing Vakar war machines crashed down, spewing fire and smoke into the sky. Ahead, the dropship landing zone came into view. 4 Vakar dropships sat in a makeshift staging area, their sleek black hulls pulsing with alien energy. Squads of Vakar soldiers were still guarding them, some clearly unaffected by the neural disruption. Jonas cursed. Figures some of them would still be holding it together. Ryan clenched his jaw. Then we break them. Ryan raised his rifle and took the first shot. A Vakar soldier staggered backward, green blood spraying as the bullet tore through its chest. The entire landing zone erupted into chaos. Jonas lobbed a grenade toward a cluster of enemies. The explosion ripped through the air, sending Vakar bodies flying. Sarah sprinted toward the closest dropship, dodging plasma fire. "Cover me!" Ryan and Jonas laid down, suppressing fire, gunning down the Vakar, still trying to coordinate their broken forces. The neural disruptor had turned their perfect formations into fractured, desperate skirmishes. One of the Vakar, a commander still holding its mind together, let out a piercing screech and pointed at Ryan. "Uh-oh," Jonas muttered. A Hunter-class Vakar burst from the smoke, blade drawn, moving at inhuman speed. Ryan barely raised his rifle before the creature tackled him, slamming him against a burning vehicle. His weapon clattered away. The Hunter's blade swung down. Jonas intercepted, tackling the alien mid-strike. He drove his knife deep into its ribs, twisting violently. The Hunter shrieked and lashed out, knocking Jonas backward. Ryan lunged for his sidearm, rolling onto his knees, and fired 3 rounds into the Hunter's skull. The alien collapsed, its body twitching. Jonas groaned, getting up. "I hate those things." Ryan grabbed his rifle. "Come on, Sarah's already got the ship running." Sarah had managed to override the Vakar dropship's controls, forcing open the entry hatch. As Ryan and Jonas sprinted toward it, she called out, "Get in, now!" Ryan leaped into the cockpit, sliding into the co-pilot's seat. Jonas followed, slamming the hatch shut. Sarah's hands flew across the controls, trying to make sense of alien technology on the fly. The ship hummed to life, hovering slightly above the ground. Jonas glanced at her. "You sure you can fly this thing?" Sarah gave him a look. "I built satellites from scratch. This ? This is easy." The ship's thrusters roared, and suddenly, they were airborne. Outside, the remaining Vakar forces panicked, firing wildly at their stolen craft. Plasma bolts whizzed past, but Sarah punched the throttle and took them skyward. Ryan's stomach dropped as the city fell away beneath them, the fires of battle shrinking below. Above, the Vakar warcruiser loomed, a behemoth against the dark clouds. Jonas exhaled. "Well, we're really doing this." Ryan checked the fusion core, still pulsing with raw energy. "We take this straight to their command center," he said. "One bomb, one ship, one chance to end this." Sarah's expression was grim. "No turning back now." Jonas just smirked. "Good. I hate turning back." Ahead, the Vakar warcruiser's massive hangar bay opened, revealing the full might of their remaining forces. Ryan tightened his grip on his rifle. Sarah's hands hovered over the controls. Jonas checked his ammo. Then, with a final breath, they plunged straight into the enemy's heart. The stolen Vakar dropship shot toward the warcruiser's hangar bay, weaving between burning debris and anti-air defenses. Plasma bolts screamed past, barely missing the ship as Sarah fought to keep control. The warcruiser was massive, a floating city of death, stretching for miles above Earth's ruined surface. Inside that ship sat their target, the command center. If they could deliver the fusion core straight into its heart, the entire fleet would come crashing down. Ryan checked his rifle, gripping it tightly. Once we're inside, we fight our way to the control deck, plant the core, and get the hell out. Jonas scoffed. And how exactly do we get the hell out? We're flying into a floating death trap. Ryan smirked. One problem at a time. Jonas rolled his eyes. You're an optimist. I hate optimists. Sarah pulled the dropship into a tight roll, dodging an incoming missile. Hang on! We're coming in hot! The hangar bay doors yawned open, revealing a swarm of Vakar soldiers waiting for them. Plasma turrets swiveled, locking onto the dropship. Ryan's stomach clenched. No turning back now. Sarah slammed the throttle forward. The dropship barreled into the hangar at full speed, skimming just above the deck, grazing enemy soldiers before crash landing in a violent skid. The impact threw them forward. Metal screamed as the ship slid across the hangar, leaving a trail of sparks before slamming into a bulkhead. Silence. Then, alarms wailed. Jonas groaned. I hate crash landings. Ryan kicked the dropship hatch open and leaped out, rifle raised. Sarah and Jonas followed, weapons drawn. The Vakar were already regrouping, black-eyed and furious. Ryan fired first, his bullets tearing through the nearest soldier. The hangar exploded into chaos as Vakar troops surged toward them, energy weapons blazing with deadly precision. Move! Ryan shouted, gunning down 2 more aliens as he sprinted for cover. Jonas lobbed a grenade over his shoulder. Little gift for you bastards. The explosion ripped through a cluster of Vakar, sending alien bodies flying. Sarah ducked behind a supply crate, pulling out the fusion core, which pulsed with dangerous energy. We have to get to the command center now. Ryan scanned the area. The hangar had 3 exits, but the fastest route was the main corridor. Unfortunately, it was also the heavily guarded route. Jonas grinned. You want fast or safe? Ryan reloaded. Fast! Jonas whooped. That's what I like to hear. They sprinted into the corridor, bullets and plasma bolts whizzing past their heads. The Vakar were no longer just soldiers. They were desperate. Their network was already in shambles, their command structure crumbling, but even in chaos, they were still deadly. Sarah checked the bunker's hacked data map on her wrist device. The control deck is 2 levels up, Ryan nodded. Then we fight our way up. The first hallway was a kill zone. Vakar snipers were perched on balconies, firing down in rapid bursts. Drones hovered overhead, scanning for targets. Ryan ducked behind a bulkhead, narrowly avoiding a plasma shot that melted a hole in the wall next to his head. Jonas growled. They're dug in deep. Ryan pulled a flash grenade from his vest. Then let's change the game. He lobbed the grenade. A blinding white light erupted, sending the Vakar into a momentary panic. Ryan and Jonas charged forward, weapons blazing. Ryan shot a drone out of the air, while Jonas emptied his magazine into a sniper above, the alien dropping like a stone. Sarah dashed past them, clutching the fusion core like her life depended on it. They reached the elevator shaft, the only way up. Jonas pried open the doors and peered inside. Elevator's dead, Sarah cursed. We have to climb? Ryan looked up. The shaft stretched into darkness, but at the very top, the command deck's emergency lights flickered. He slung his rifle over his back. No choice. Jonas muttered. Yeah, because climbing in the middle of an alien warship sounds like a great plan. Ryan grinned. You first, then. Jonas rolled his eyes. I hate you. The climb was brutal. Ryan's arms burned as he hauled himself up the maintenance ladder, gripping each icy rung like his life depended on it. Below, Sarah struggled with the fusion core, its energy pulsing violently. Jonas climbed last, keeping an eye on the elevator doors below. Halfway up, the alarms shifted in pitch. Sarah gasped. They know where we're going. Jonas looked down, then swore. We got a problem. Ryan followed his gaze. A Vakar soldier had pried open the bottom elevator doors. It hissed, eyes narrowing. Then, with inhuman speed, it lunged into the shaft, climbing the walls like a spider. Ryan's heart pounded. Move! Jonas yanked his pistol and fired downward. The shots grazed the alien, but it kept coming. Sarah nearly dropped the core. Hurry! Ryan gritted his teeth and climbed faster, his hands slipping on the cold rungs. Jonas drew his knife, waiting. If this thing gets too close, I'm going to make it regret its life choices. The Vakar shrieked, climbing faster, faster. Ryan reached the top, grabbing the command deck's hatch. He forced it open, muscles screaming. Sarah shoved the core up first, then scrambled through. Ryan followed, just as the Vakar reached Jonas. The alien lunged, claws outstretched. Jonas drove his knife straight into its eye. The Vakar let out a horrible screech, losing its grip, and plummeted into the darkness below. Jonas exhaled, shaking his head. I'm too old for this. Ryan pulled him up. Come on. They staggered onto the command deck. Ahead, through the transparent glass of the command bridge, they saw him. The Vakar Supreme Commander. The Vakar Supreme Commander stood motionless at the head of the command deck, flanked by his last remaining elite guards. His obsidian black eyes studied Ryan, Jonas, and Sarah. 3 fragile humans who had torn apart his invasion with nothing but desperation and fury. The war had gone from conquest to catastrophe for the Vakar, and he knew it. Yet, even as his empire crumbled, he did not move. He did not speak. He simply watched them. The eerie silence sent a chill through Ryan's spine. They were in the enemy's heart now, and the enemy wasn't done fighting. Ryan's grip on his rifle tightened. Jonas cracked his knuckles, rolling his shoulders. Sarah clutched the fusion core, its energy thrumming like a heartbeat in her hands. The Supreme Commander raised a single hand. His elite guards sprang to life. Ryan barely had time to yell, "Move!" before plasma bolts shredded the air around them. Jonas dove left, rolling behind a fallen console. Ryan went right, unloading round after round at the Vakar guards as they charged with unnatural speed. Sarah ducked behind the command table, shielding the fusion core with her body. The Supreme Commander simply watched, unmoving, as his soldiers fought to the death. One of the Vakar elites lunged at Jonas, twin plasma blades slicing through the air. Jonas barely dodged, ducking under the first strike, but the second came too fast. Clang! Ryan intercepted the blade with his combat knife, forcing the Vakar's arm away. Jonas seized the opening and jammed his pistol against the alien's gut, pulling the trigger 3 times. The Vakar let out a high-pitched screech, black blood spurting from the wounds. Jonas shoved its body aside and spat blood onto the floor. I really, really hate these things. Ryan wiped sweat from his forehead. 2 more guards left. One was already charging Sarah. Jonas snapped his rifle up. Too late. Sarah rolled under the console, barely dodging the plasma blade that cut through the air where she had just been. She slammed her foot into the alien's knee, making it stagger. Then she grabbed a plasma pistol from a fallen Vakar soldier and emptied the entire clip into the elite's head. The Vakar collapsed, its body twitching violently before going still. Sarah panted. I can't believe that worked. Jonas grinned. You scare me sometimes, Wu. Ryan turned to the final Vakar warrior. It hesitated, Its psionic connection was still severed. It was alone. Ryan raised his rifle. The Vakar roared and charged. Ryan fired once. The bullet pierced the creature's skull. It fell mid-step. And then, there was only one Vakar left. The Supreme Commander. He had watched his forces fall. He had watched his empire crumble at the hands of these defiant, furious humans. Yet he still did not move. Ryan, still catching his breath, stepped forward, his rifle trained on the alien's skull. The Supreme Commander finally spoke. His voice was a deep, guttural rumble, yet perfectly clear in their minds. "This is not victory, human." Ryan narrowed his eyes. "Looks like it from here." The Vakar tilted his head. "You do not understand what you have done." Jonas scoffed. Yeah, classic villain speech. "Sorry, buddy. Humanity doesn't do surrender." The Supreme Commander was silent for a moment, then said, "We did not come to conquer. We came to prevent what is coming." Sarah frowned. "What the hell are you talking about?" The Vakar finally moved, stepping closer. Ryan tensed, his finger hovering over the trigger. But the Supreme Commander did not attack. Instead, he murmured, "You are a species of war, of chaos. You were meant to fall before something far worse than us." Ryan's chest tightened. A lie? A last-second attempt to break them? But there was something off. Something about the way the Supreme Commander spoke felt like the truth. Jonas raised an eyebrow. "What's worse than an alien death fleet trying to wipe us out?" The Vakar's black eyes gleamed. "The reason we conquered, the reason we built an empire, the enemy we have been running from for 1,000 years." A heavy silence fell over the command deck. Sarah exhaled. "We'll deal with that when it comes." Ryan nodded. "But you? You're done." The Supreme Commander finally tilted his head down. A strange, almost amused look crossed his face. "Perhaps that is what terrifies me most." And for the first time since the invasion began, he looked afraid. Ryan didn't waste time. He turned to Sarah. "Plant the core." She didn't hesitate. She slammed the fusion core onto the command console, activating the detonation timer. 1 minute. The Supreme Commander did not run. He simply watched them go. Ryan, Jonas, and Sarah sprinted for the hangar, dodging gunfire from the last straggling Vakar, who hadn't yet realized their empire was already dead. Sarah's wrist console beeped. 30 seconds. They reached a Vakar fighter ship, sleek and built for speed. Sarah jumped into the pilot's seat, flipping switches wildly. Ryan and Jonas piled in, slamming the hatch shut. 20 seconds. Sarah punched the thrusters. The ship roared to life, rocketing forward, out of the hangar, into the void of space. The war cruiser loomed behind them, burning, shaking, breaking apart. Ryan turned, watching as the fusion core's energy reached critical mass. 3, 2, 1. A brilliant white explosion erupted from within the warship, consuming everything in its path. The Vakar command ship, the heart of their fleet, their last chance at victory, was erased. Ryan exhaled. "It's over." Jonas slumped back. "Holy shit, we actually did it." Sarah, shaking, whispered, "We won." They landed back on Earth hours later, greeted by what remained of humanity. The Vakar fleet, leaderless, broken, retreated into the void. The war was over. Humanity had survived. But Ryan couldn't shake the Supreme Commander's last words. Something worse was coming. And this time, the Vakar wouldn't be the enemy. Ryan tightened his fist. Whatever came next, humanity would be ready. Humanity would fight. Because Earth was never an easy target. And it never would be again. The stars above Althera Prime shimmered like frozen fire, scattered across the abyss of space. For centuries, This world had belonged to the Dominion, a ruthless empire that saw itself as the rightful rulers of the Orion Arm. They had conquered, enslaved, and broken species who dared to resist, leaving behind a trail of silenced civilizations. And humanity? Humanity was supposed to be just another footnote in their long history of domination. When Earth's colonies first made contact with the Dominion, the rulers of the vast alien empire had laughed at the audacity of these fragile creatures from Sol. They had allowed humanity to settle on a handful of fringe worlds, seeing no reason to consider them a threat. And when the Dominion demanded tribute, humanity had paid. When they took prisoners, humanity protested, but did nothing. When they slaughtered settlements on the frontier, humanity mourned. But they did not fight back. Not at first. Then came the massacre of Tiberius IV, a prosperous colony, home to 5 million humans, reduced to ashes in a single Dominion assault. Entire families burned alive in the streets, children torn from their homes and thrown into slave ships, entire cityscapes turned to nothing but charred ruins. The Dominion had expected fear. They had expected submission. Instead, they awakened something they never should have. Humanity had stayed silent for years. They had swallowed every insult, every act of cruelty, every moment of humiliation. But silence was not submission. It was patience. It was the quiet before the storm. And when the storm came, it was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Dominion's arrogance shattered the moment the Warship of Vengeance arrived in their space. It did not come with emissaries. It did not come with pleas or demands. It came like a specter of doom, its black hull reflecting no light, its weapons primed for destruction. A ship built in the shadows, forged from stolen Dominion schematics, enhanced with human ingenuity. It was not the largest warship ever seen, nor the most technologically advanced. But what made it different was who commanded it. Admiral Jonathan Kane, a man whose family had been among those slaughtered on Tiberius IV, a man who had sworn an oath not to peace, not to diplomacy, but to vengeance. From the moment his ship entered Dominion space, it made no secret of its intent. It tore through the first patrol it encountered like a blade through flesh. Dominion officers, long accustomed to watching lesser species grovel at their feet, found themselves screaming in terror as their ships were ripped apart by weapons of horrifying precision. And then, the message was broadcast across every Dominion channel. A simple sentence, spoken in a language they had never heard before but understood perfectly. You should have left us alone. The war had begun, and humanity would not be silent any longer. The Dominion scrambled to respond. Their fleets, which had ruled unchallenged for centuries, had never faced an enemy quite like this. Most rebellions were easily crushed. Most species, once beaten, remained broken. But humans were different. At first, the Dominion's high command dismissed the Warship of Vengeance as nothing more than a rogue element, an act of defiance that would be swiftly dealt with. But they underestimated the depth of humanity's rage. They thought Admiral Jonathan Kane was alone. They were wrong. When the Dominion sent a fleet to intercept the warship, they expected a one-sided battle. The Imperial Strike Force was composed of 20 warships, each battle-tested and equipped with the most advanced weaponry in their arsenal. Against them, one human warship. The Dominion commander, Admiral Rael Zorth, broadcast his terms to Kane before the battle began. Surrender now, human. We may yet find mercy for your species. The reply came in a voice that was cold, calm, and deadly. Mercy? Number, there will be none of that today. And then the trap was sprung. From the shadow of a nearby asteroid field, 5 more human warships emerged. Their hulls were black as the void itself, the product of stolen Dominion stealth technology. They had been waiting, watching, silent as death. The battle erupted in an instant. Human ships did not fight like the Dominion. They did not move in predictable formations or rely on brute force. They fought dirty. They used deception, ambushes, and ruthless tactics that the Dominion considered dishonorable. To humanity, honor meant nothing. Victory meant everything. The Warship of Vengeance led the charge, cutting through Dominion shields with weapons engineered specifically to exploit their weaknesses. Dominion officers screamed as their ships were torn apart by pinpoint railgun fire, their hulls breached by missiles that detonated with terrifying precision. Admiral Rael Zorth barely had time to process the carnage before Kane's warship jumped directly behind him, a maneuver no Dominion captain would have dared attempt. Kane's voice crackled through the comms. "You never should have touched Tiberius IV." Then the Dominion flagship exploded. The battle was over in less than 20 minutes. 20 ships reduced to burning wreckage. And from that moment forward, the Dominion knew humanity was at war, and they were not going to stop. The news of the ambush sent shockwaves through the Dominion. For the first time in centuries, a Dominion fleet had been utterly annihilated, not by another great empire, not by some rogue faction, but by humans, a species they had mocked, a species they had dismissed as weak. Now, the Dominion's high command convened in a meeting of crisis. Inside the grand war chambers of their capital world, holograms of their highest-ranking officials flickered to life. Admirals, governors, intelligence officers, all gathered under the shadow of the imperial sovereign, the supreme ruler of the Dominion. His reptilian gaze burned with fury as he addressed his subordinates. "Explain to me," his voice was slow, measured, dangerous, how a species of primitive bipeds destroyed an entire fleet. A nervous silence followed. Then, Grand Admiral Vorthak stepped forward. "They have been preparing for this war longer than we realized, Your Eminence. Their tactics, their weapons, these are not the acts of an undisciplined rebellion. This is a military force, a purpose-built force designed to counter us." The sovereign's claws curled into the armrests of his throne. "You assured me they were weak." "They were." Vorthak hesitated, until we gave them a reason not to be. The sovereign's gaze darkened. Tiberius IV. The destruction of that colony had been a warning, a demonstration of Dominion power. But instead of crushing human resistance, it had forged something far more dangerous, a war machine fueled by vengeance. The Dominion had expected compliance. Instead, they had birthed an enemy that would not stop until blood had been paid for blood. The sovereign turned to his intelligence director. "Where is this warship now?" The officer bowed slightly. "It struck another target yesterday, a Dominion outpost on the edge of the Valshar sector. No survivors." The room tensed. Then another officer spoke. "Your Eminence, with respect, this is not just a rogue admiral. We intercepted communications between human colonies. They are not only at war, they are mobilizing." Silence fell over the war chamber. Then the sovereign spoke a single sentence. "Send the fleets." Kane stood on the bridge, watching as his fleet prepared for its next strike. What had once been a single warship had now become a growing armada. More human warships had emerged from hiding, vessels that had spent years in secret development. In the shadows, humanity had prepared for this war, gathering allies, stealing technology, and building the weapons they would need to destroy the Dominion. Now, the time for hiding was over. Commander Ava Sinclair stepped up beside him. "Dominion forces are moving, sir. They've declared total war." Kane's gaze never left the stars. He had known this moment would come. The Dominion would bring their full might against humanity, and that was exactly what he wanted. He turned to his crew. "We've spent years waiting for this fight. Now it's time to end them." The stars around them burned as the warship of vengeance made its next jump. The war had only just begun. The Dominion's fleets moved like a vast storm, warships blotting out the stars as they surged toward human-occupied space. Hundreds of capital ships, thousands of fighters, entire battle groups formed in tight formations, prepared to do what they had always done: crush defiance before it could spread. This time, however, they faced something different. Humanity had been preparing for war far longer than the Dominion had realized. They had studied the Dominion's weaknesses, reverse-engineered their technology, and built weapons designed specifically to shatter their empire. And at the center of it all was Admiral Jonathan Kane. The Dominion fleet emerged from hyperspace, their warships gliding into the orbit of Carthage 7, a human colony on the fringes of Dominion-controlled space. The planet below had little strategic value. Its main purpose was agriculture and resource gathering. But to the Dominion, that didn't matter. This was about sending a message. The fleet's admiral, Darvok Thren, stood on the bridge of his flagship, a massive dreadnought bristling with enough firepower to wipe out the colony in minutes. He turned to his weapons officer. "Begin planetary bombardment." The order had barely left his lips when the alarms screamed across the bridge. A new fleet had just arrived. Humanity's true response had come. Kane's warships tore into the Dominion fleet without warning. They did not form battle lines, did not engage in slow, methodical fleet combat like the Dominion was used to. No, they struck like predators, using speed, deception, and brute efficiency. The Warship of Vengeance led the charge, its weapons firing with terrifying precision. One Dominion cruiser was torn apart before its crew could even react. Another fell moments later, its engines ripped to pieces by a human railgun volley. For the first time in Dominion history, they were outmatched. Their shields were strong, but human weapons had been engineered to bypass them. Their formations were disciplined, but human tactics were unpredictable. And then came the worst part: the boarding parties. Alarms blared. Human soldiers had breached the ship, carving through corridors with terrifying speed. The Dominion, long used to overwhelming force and subjugation, was not prepared for this kind of brutality. These weren't just soldiers. They were Tiberius survivors. Men and women who had lost everything when the Dominion had wiped out their home. They did not fight for land, for honor, or for conquest. They fought for vengeance, and vengeance was merciless. Dominion officers screamed as human forces swept through the ship, cutting down anything in their path. The halls ran red with alien blood. The once proud Dominion warriors, who had terrorized the galaxy for generations, found themselves overwhelmed, outmatched, and hunted. The last thing Admiral Thren saw before the blade slid across his throat was the cold, merciless eyes of a human soldier who had lost his family on Tiberius 4. The battle was over, and with it, the first great victory of the war. The Dominion had lost an entire fleet. The survivors fled in terror, their once mighty warships reduced to burning wreckage. On Carthage 7, the human colonists looked to the sky, watching as the ships that had come to destroy them were instead obliterated. And aboard the Warship of Vengeance, Kane stood on the bridge, staring at the battlefield. One battle was won, but the war was far from over. Commander Sinclair approached him. "High Command is ready for the next strike, sir." Kane nodded slowly. "Good. Then let's show the Dominion the true cost of their mistakes." The war had only just begun, and humanity was far from finished. The Dominion could no longer ignore the truth. Their fleets were being torn apart. Their once invincible armies were retreating, Their empire, which had ruled with an iron grip for centuries, was losing to humans, a species they had once dismissed as nothing more than another weak addition to their conquests. And now the war had reached its most critical moment. Humanity was coming for their home world. On the bridge of the Warship of Vengeance, Admiral Kane stood before a holographic projection of Dominion Prime, the capital of the Empire. It was a world of towering citadels, impenetrable fortresses, and orbital defenses designed to withstand any invasion. No species had ever dared attack it. But Kane wasn't just planning to attack it. He was planning to burn it to the ground. His officers stood around him, grim-faced and silent as he outlined the strategy. "The Dominion believes they are untouchable," Kane said, his voice cold and steady. "We're going to prove them wrong." Ava Sinclair, his second-in-command, nodded. "Their homeworld defenses are strong, but they were designed to stop large-scale invasions, not a precision strike." And that was humanity's advantage. Instead of launching a massive fleet-to-fleet engagement, Kane's plan relied on speed and surgical precision. He had studied the Dominion's defenses for years. He knew their blind spots, their weaknesses, their vulnerabilities. The attack would come in 3 waves. A decoy fleet would launch a full frontal assault, drawing Dominion forces away from their capital. A stealth strike team, led by Kane himself, would slip past the defenses and land directly in the heart of the capital city. Once inside, they would detonate a weapon that would cripple Dominion Prime's infrastructure, sending the Empire into chaos. This wasn't just an attack. It was the death knell of the Dominion. And it was about to begin. The first wave of human ships arrived in a blaze of fire, emerging from hyperspace like avenging wraiths. Dominion fleets scrambled to respond, launching countermeasures, firing batteries of plasma and energy cannons. The sky above their homeworld turned into a battlefield of fire and debris, just as planned. While the Dominion focused on the decoy fleet, the Warship of Vengeance and its small escort of stealth ships slipped past the chaos, undetected. They navigated through orbital debris, evading automated turrets, using the very same cloaking technology the Dominion had once used against them. The moment they entered the lower atmosphere, the order came. "Deploy strike teams." They hit the ground hard. Dropships roared through the sky, crashing into the streets of the capital city. The Dominion had never imagined an enemy could bring war to their very doorstep. And now, human soldiers were storming through their streets. Armed with weapons forged for this very purpose, they cut through enemy forces like wildfire. Explosions rocked the city. Dominion soldiers, once proud conquerors, now ran for their lives. The strike team had one objective: reach the Dominion War Council's central command building and disable planetary defenses. And they had 10 minutes to do it. Kane and his team moved with brutal efficiency. Plasma fire burned the air around them. They pushed forward, fighting their way through the city streets, killing anything that stood in their way. Human fury had reached its peak, and nothing would stop them now. They stormed the War Council's headquarters, breaking through reinforced barricades, slaughtering guards who had once ruled over 1,000 enslaved worlds. At the top of the command tower, the Dominion's leaders cowered in fear. For the first time in their existence, they were afraid. Kane stepped forward, blood splattered on his armor, his pulse rifle still smoking. He looked down at the Dominion's High Chancellor, the most powerful being in their empire. "You should have left us alone." Then he pulled the trigger. The explosion that followed was heard across the entire planet. The War Council's headquarters, the heart of the Dominion's rule, was obliterated in a single instant. With their leaders dead, their military forces crumbling, and their homeworld in chaos, the Dominion's rule collapsed. Across the galaxy, Enslaved worlds rose up against their former masters. Dominion fleets surrendered or were hunted down. The empire that had once ruled through terror and oppression was no more. And at the center of it all, standing amidst the burning ruins of their capital, Admiral Kane looked up at the smoke-filled sky and knew humanity had won. The war was over, but the legend of the Warship of Vengeance would live on forever. The Dominion was dead, its fleets shattered, its homeworld burning, its rulers buried beneath the ruins of their own arrogance. Across the galaxy, the enslaved and the oppressed rose up against their former masters, breaking their chains, taking back their worlds. What had once been an empire of terror had become a graveyard of power. But victory did not mean peace. For Admiral Jonathan Kane, the war was not over, because even in death, the Dominion had left behind a final curse. With the Dominion gone, chaos spread like wildfire. For centuries, entire systems had lived under its rule, their economies, trade, and infrastructure dependent on their empire's vast network. Now, that network was gone. Warlords, former Dominion generals, and even human factions began fighting over the scraps. The same species who had once been united in the war against the Dominion now turned on each other. And somewhere, deep in the shadows of space, the last remnants of the Dominion were gathering. They were not finished yet. Kane knew it was coming. As the Warship of Vengeance patrolled through the wreckage of former Dominion space, intelligence reports confirmed what he had suspected. A last Dominion fleet had survived. And they wanted revenge. The trap was set near the asteroid fields of Tarsus V, a remote, uncharted region where hyperspace distortions made navigation difficult. Kane's fleet was investigating reports of scattered Dominion forces regrouping when the attack came. A fleet of Dominion warships decloaked from the asteroid shadows. The last of the Dominion's elite forces, admirals who had escaped the destruction of their homeworld, officers who had sworn to make humanity suffer before they died. The Warship of Vengeance was outnumbered 6-1. But Kane didn't care. The Dominion ships swarmed forward, weapons blazing. Plasma bolts streaked through space, railgun rounds ripped through the void, and explosions lit up the asteroid field like fireworks. Kane's fleet moved with deadly precision, dodging fire, returning destruction tenfold. Even outnumbered, they fought with ruthless efficiency. The Warship of Vengeance led the charge, its cannons ripping through Dominion cruisers, its missiles hunting down and exterminating the last of the enemy's command ships. The Dominion admirals who had sworn vengeance did not live to see another day. One by one, their warships were turned into drifting wreckage. The final Dominion commander, bleeding and broken, broadcast a message to Kane as his ship burned around him. "You think this is victory, human?" he spat. "You think this is the end?" Kane leaned forward, his voice cold as death. "Number, this is justice." The final Dominion flagship exploded in a blinding burst of light. And just like that, the war was truly over. The galaxy would never be the same. With the Dominion's shadow lifted, new powers began to rise. Some worlds wanted peace, others wanted war. And humanity? Humanity had proven itself. They had been underestimated, dismissed, mocked. But now the galaxy knew the truth. Humans were not to be ignored. And if anyone ever threatened them again, they would burn like the Dominion did. Admiral Kane looked at the stars, knowing the war had changed everything. But one thing would never change. Humanity would never be silent again. The war was over. The Dominion, once the supreme power of the Orion Arm, was nothing but ashes and wreckage. Its fleets were gone, its rulers dead. The empire that had enslaved entire species and ruled with an iron fist for centuries had ceased to exist. But peace did not follow. Power abhors a vacuum, and with the Dominion's destruction, the cracks began to form. Kane stood aboard the warship of Vengeance, staring out at the stars. He had won the war, but he was about to lose everything else, because now humanity itself was tearing apart. At first it was small, a few disagreements between human-controlled worlds, arguments over how to handle Dominion space. Some wanted to liberate and help rebuild the broken planets, forging alliances with newly freed species. Others, those who had lost the most in the war, wanted vengeance. They wanted to conquer. The war had transformed humanity. Once a race that sought peace and exploration, they had learned how to kill, how to burn, how to make an empire fall. And now, for the first time, humans were turning those skills on each other. Kane watched as factions began forming. The Terran Republic, those who believed humanity should establish a new intergalactic government, one built on peace, trade, and cooperation with other species. The Iron Suns, a faction made up of former soldiers, warlords, and bitter survivors who wanted to turn Dominion space into a new human empire. The Isolationists, colonies that had seen enough war, demanding humanity withdraw from galactic affairs and focus only on protecting its own. And in the middle of it all, Kane, the man who had won the war, the man who had the blood of billions on his hands, the man everyone wanted on their side. Kane's fleet had been stationed at Carthage 7, a former human colony that had become a meeting ground for the new human factions. The leaders of the Republic and the Iron Suns had gathered for peace talks, hoping to negotiate the future of humanity's role in the galaxy. Kane, a hero to both sides, had been chosen to mediate. But the peace talks never had a chance. An assassination attempt changed everything. As the leaders debated in the grand chamber of Carthage 7's citadel, a hidden explosive detonated. The blast killed dozens, including key Republic diplomats. The Iron Suns representatives escaped unharmed, and just like that, civil war erupted. The Republic blamed the Iron Suns. The Iron Suns denied involvement, but their fleets immediately moved to seize control of former Dominion territory. Kane barely escaped the explosion with his life. His warship, once the sword that had brought the Dominion to its knees, was now caught between two sides of a new war. Humanity was at war with itself. Kane's officers stood before him, waiting for orders. Some wanted him to join the Republic, to fight for unity and peace. Others urged him to side with the Iron Suns to ensure humanity's dominance in the galaxy. Kane said nothing. He had fought one war. He had killed for vengeance. He had destroyed an empire. And now the people he fought for were turning on each other. Commander Ava Sinclair stepped forward. "What do we do, Admiral?" Kane looked out at the stars. He knew one thing for certain. He was done fighting for other people. The Dominion had burned because of what they did to humanity. Now, if humanity wanted to burn itself down, they would do it without him. Kane made his decision. He turned to his officers. "We're leaving." The warship of Vengeance departed from Carthage 7, disappearing into deep space. Kane left the war behind. Let the Republic and the Iron Suns fight. Let them tear each other apart over what humanity was supposed to become. He had given humanity its chance. Now he would carve his own path. With a crew of the most battle-hardened veterans from the Dominion War, Kane set a new course, not for Earth, not for Dominion space, not for the Republic or the Iron Suns, but for the unknown. There were more enemies out there, more threats, more civilizations that thought humans were weak. And when those enemies came knocking, they would learn the same lesson the Dominion had. Humanity never stayed silent. The galaxy had changed forever. The Dominion was gone, wiped from existence. Humanity had proven itself on the battlefield, but instead of uniting in victory, they had turned on each other. The Republic and the Iron Suns waged war for control, while countless other factions rose and fell in the chaos. And somewhere beyond the reach of their petty conflicts, Admiral Jonathan Kane disappeared into the void. For years, no one heard from him. No distress signals, no sightings, no transmissions. It was as if he had vanished. But the galaxy would soon learn. He was never truly gone. While humanity tore itself apart, something far worse was awakening. At the edge of known space, in the unexplored Nix expanse, Kane and his crew discovered something terrifying. A fleet of alien warships, unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Their hulls were black as the void, their weapons far beyond Dominion or human technology. They moved without sound, without warning. Their attacks left no survivors. They were the architects, a race so ancient, so powerful, that even the Dominion had feared them. They had not been seen in millennia. The galaxy believed they were myths, legends of an enemy so devastating that entire civilizations had simply vanished when they came. And now, they were returning. Kane watched from the bridge of the Warship of Vengeance as his scouts transmitted the last moments of a dying world, one of the former Dominion colonies, completely erased in minutes. Not conquered, not enslaved, erased. The architects weren't here to rule. They weren't here to negotiate. They were here to cleanse. Kane had spent his entire life fighting wars. He had destroyed an empire, crushed his enemies, and brought entire fleets to their knees. But what he saw now? This was different. This wasn't a war. This was extermination. Kane knew he had a choice. He could disappear into the void, live out the rest of his days far away from another war. Or he could warn the galaxy, even if they wouldn't believe him, even if humanity had abandoned him, even if the Republic and the Iron Suns still fought their war. Because if the architects arrived and the galaxy was still divided, then everything, humanity, the Republic, the Iron Suns, every species that had once lived under the Dominion's rule, would burn together. Kane turned to his crew. "We go back." They exchanged uncertain glances. One of his officers spoke. "Sir, after what we did, the Republic sees us as traitors. The Iron Suns think we abandoned them. The entire galaxy thinks we're dead." Kane's eyes hardened. "Then we'll make them listen." The Warship of Vengeance turned away from the darkness of the Nix expanse, its engines roaring to life. It had been built for war, and war was coming. Not for power, not for vengeance, but for survival. Weeks later, across every faction, across every world, a single transmission interrupted every broadcast. It was Kane. His face appeared across Dominion ruins, human colonies, Republic command centers, Iron Suns warships. His voice, once thought lost, echoed across the stars. "You thought the war was over. You thought the enemy was defeated." His eyes were sharp, his voice like steel. "You were wrong." Behind him, a hologram of the architect fleet loomed, a nightmare of blackened warships, unlike anything seen before. "If we do not unite, if we do not fight together, then everything we have built, everything we have bled for, will be nothing." He paused, letting the silence hang. "You may hate me, you may want me dead, but you don't have a choice." He leaned forward. "Because the real war is just beginning." And then, the Warship of Vengeance disappeared from the broadcast. But the galaxy had heard the warning, and for the first time since the fall of the Dominion, the fractured factions of humanity looked to the stars and prepared for war. The Dominion is dead, humanity has fallen into civil war, but an even greater enemy is returning from the darkness, and only one man saw it coming. Will humanity listen? Or will they fall before the architects arrive? That is a story for another time. The Warship of Vengeance still flies. And when the architects come, they will learn what happens when you push humanity too far.